So in any case, welcome everybody. Thank you very much for attending the second of our four-part webinar series about using Roblox in education. Again, really appreciate you all being here, taking the time to work with us, learn with us. And I'm just here to kind of set up the webinar, just to give you some idea of what we're going to be doing. So today we're going to be talking about digital civility. Just because this is a very, very near and dear topic to our hearts. We strive to make sure that the Roblox community is always safe and secure for our users. And we also want to make sure that we are encouraging our users and educating them to be the best digital citizens that they can be. Because we really want to not just have an online community, we want a healthy, friendly, and productive online community as well. And so we have Laura Higgins on the line. She's the director of Digital Civility for us at Roblox. Thank you very much for jumping on at this later hour in the UK. She'll be running the webinar today. We also still do have Genevieve, who's lead of our education and curriculum design at Roblox. So she'll be here to field any kind of education-specific questions that may arise through the course of the webinar. But yeah, with that, Laura, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Leica. That was a lovely introduction. Hopefully you can all hear me. Just to reiterate, as Leica said, please do submit any questions. We'll try and answer some of them as we go, and I will make sure that there's time at the end for anything else that comes up as well. I'm really pleased to be here chatting with everyone, and I hope this might be the start of something through this crazy time we're all dealing with the COVID-19 crisis. This is the new normal, and so I'm going to touch on some of that in my presentation, but also if this is something people find helpful, then perhaps it's something we could build into the program longer term as well. And I know that our education team, who I work really closely with, would like that as well. So thank you to everyone joining, and spread the word if you like it. So without further ado, a little introduction from myself. So as you can tell, I'm British. I'm assuming most of the people on the call are in the US. I have been working with Roblox for, well, nearly a year and a half now, but prior to that, I was on their safety advisory board. So my relationship with Roblox is over 3 years now. I've worked very closely with all the moderation and safety teams there around spreading the safety messages and the tools that are on the platform. So I know it very well. Prior to joining Roblox, I worked for the UK Safer Internet Centre. So it was funded by the European Commission to establish services to support educators, anyone with a duty of care for children, really. So I worked with police, healthcare, educators, and social care people who had concerns about young people online. And through that, I built relationships with lots of internet companies, tech companies, and hence my relationship with Roblox. For just a bit of further background, I'm a visiting senior fellow in digital safeguarding at the University of Suffolk here in the UK, and I still work with their PhD students on various research projects. Some of my specialisms, I had a award-winning helpline which was the first in the world actually to support victims of image-based abuse, now known regularly as sextortion or revenge porn, but we were the first. And I still regularly consult for people like the United Nations on the digital rights of the child and violence against women and girls online. Roblox for me has been amazing because it channels various things I'm passionate about. One being online child protection, but also this element of creativity and education, and it's the interactivity that happens online. So I'm really happy to be here, and thank you so much everyone for joining in today. So most of you, I imagine, will be familiar with Roblox. Just, very simply, our mission really is to bring the world together through play. We have this idea that we're working towards this co-experience where young people can create, be social, it's entertainment, media, gaming, all of these things in one metaverse where we want it to be as free and accessible to people as possible. So it is free to play and it's free to create at the beginning. It's multi-platform and it appeals to a huge age range. In very simple terms, people come on the platform, they can develop and create the games. And Genevieve, I'm going to bring you in a little while just briefly to talk about the stuff you do there. But then they create these games and experience, of which there are millions and millions. And then other kids come in, they can play, they can socialize, as well as enjoying those games. Roblox Studio is where most of the creation happens. Genevieve, are you okay to just give a 2-second overview on that?
So Roblox Studio is our free online platform, and that's where all of our games are created. So every single game that you see on Roblox was created on Roblox Studio. It's free to play, it's free to publish. You can actually publish to just about any device out there. There's, mobile, phone, as well as PC, Mac, and Chromebook. It is a little bit different, though, to build. So to build, you do need to have either a Mac or a PC. And while I've got everyone, I just want to remind you, if you've got a question right now, go ahead and use that question and answer feature, because we're not going to be usually calling on people who have their hands up. So just so you know, I am going to lower a hand right now, but whatever your question is, just go ahead and type it into the question and answer session, and I'll either answer it in chat or we'll come back.
And for those of you who came in a little bit late, if you do not see the question and answer option, if you don't see an option to ask a question, it's possible that you have an incorrect link from the reminder email. We resent out a link so you can rejoin and participate using the Q&A feature. So just a heads up on that.
Thanks, guys. That was a fantastic overview. And reiterate, send us those questions. I'm really happy. Ask me anything. We're good to go. So in terms of the types of creations, Roblox is an imagination platform. So whatever the kids want to create, whatever they want to build, they exist. So we have something for everyone. Some of the games are quite traditional format of there's a beginning, a middle, and an end, or an objective to achieve, or somebody's going to be the winner. And some of them are purely experiences. It could be that you're a bird who flies around, or you can go fishing. There is something for everyone on the platform. So I'm going to move on a little, and through this presentation, I hope that I can give you an insight into my personal role within Roblox and the things I'm passionate about, but also some of the safety stuff we do. We're gonna dip in and out of civility and safety throughout, and hopefully give you some online safety tips and resources that you can take away afterwards as well.
So it looks like we're good to go. It doesn't look like we have any questions in a second.
There we go. So for us, play is really an essential human need. It's essential for all of us, young people and adults. And for children, it's how they learn new skills. It's how they learn about the world around them. Parents use play as a way to engage with kids, using both toys, but also just general play to teach them life skills that they need really from birth. But then suddenly there's a bit of a disconnect when kids get a bit older and digital technology gets involved. Suddenly it stops being seen as play, and it's either a waste of time, or it's problematic or risky. However, I don't think that's the case. We live in a new world now, and digital play is as important now as offline play. We often say there is no online and offline for kids. Digital connects people in a way it never has before. They learn different skills that most kids wouldn't have had before. When we think about the STEM subjects that we want to teach in schools, kids may not have had that without some of this ability to learn tech. And now, particularly in the environment we're in, it's more important than ever. So touching on some of my specific projects, why Digital Civility? Well, it's a new thing. And I'm very, very lucky that I joined a company who were right at the beginning of the curve of this. They already saw it as where we needed to go. Safety is the number one thing that we need on any platform that works for children. But it's in our DNA at Roblox. It really is. The platform was built from the ground up with safety first. And they always are looking at new solutions and innovative ways to improve on safety. But I think once you've done that, it gives you the opportunity to do something even more creative. And Roblox really have done that. We have this group of young people, they're like sponges. You as educators know this is the right time to be teaching some of these skills. So if safety is a given, why can't we use that then to move on and give these kids some additional life skills that are outside of the normal classroom environment? And I think that's where we sit. So we are trying to teach them about the empathy online, kindness, teamwork, how to solve problems, and how to resolve conflicts in a non-confrontational way that happen naturally in an online environment. And that's what we mean when we talk about digital civility. These are both skills they need online and offline. And also, as you know, many people on Roblox are starting out, they're quite young. This is the start of their online life, of their journey. So if we can give them those digital literacy skills now, it's going to give them a good stead when they move on to other games and other platforms as they get older. So I don't know, some of you may have heard of the term safety by design. It's been used by a lot of governments recently to talk about expectations on tech platforms. Essentially what that means is that before you launch anything to the public, you need to ensure that all of your safety reaches a bare minimum on the platform. So they expect moderation, they expect some automated tools and some advice to people who use the platform. Well, we have all of those things, and we're always looking, as I say, to get better. But we're pretty ahead of the curve. So for us, it was then like, how can we be nicer by design? This whole idea of people don't want a toxic environment. They want to have a nice time when they're on platforms, whether it's social media or gaming. So how can we do that? How can we encourage people? And that very much is where we are right now. So we're exploring ways that we can make the in-game experience play to those things we were talking about. How can we encourage empathy? How can we give kids the opportunity to engage in a really positive teamwork kind of way? How do we reward good behavior, but also get young people to recognize how they feel when something good happens? Because those are the things we know that will really impact on them moving forwards. Reason we're having this webinar today is about us helping parents and educators to have advice, access to resources, and not just for Roblox. A big part of my role is about spreading other people's message as well around community safety, civility, and general online platform literacy. They're really important things. When I first joined the platform, one thing that became quite obvious is Roblox have amazing tools, but we weren't always the best at articulating them. And that's something we're really trying to work on. And actually bringing in the whole community is key to some of that messaging. Working with safety leaders around the world. Again, we're going to touch on all of these topics a little bit through the webinar, but we have to listen. We have to go and get advice. We're very good, but we all have things we can share. And the digital safety organizations we work with all have different strengths. Listening to the community for me right now is my number one priority. And this isn't just the community of players and developers. This is people we work with. This is educators. This is parents. This is everyone. And some of that work has taken shape in the form of surveys. So some of those surveys we're going to dig into a little bit through this presentation. We also have just launched a couple which we're going to publish very soon. So with permission of the education team, we'd love to share those links with everyone that's been on the call. If you're interested, let us know. And as soon as it's published, we'll make sure you can see that as well. But it's one thing to listen to the community, but then it's about how we adapt to that and what we do with that information. And then also sharing what it is that they want people to hear, because it's not just us they're talking to. Things that happen on Roblox are probably happening on other platforms too. So, with one of our surveys last year, we carried out a survey in the US of about 3,500 US parents and nearly 600 teenagers. This really resonated with me last October, and now considering the current climate we're in, it resonates even more. So young people told us the reasons why they play games. So first and foremost, it's fun. That's true. That's right for everybody. And right now we all need fun. but also these other things. It helps me relax. Well, we all know that. Many of us will go and have a little go of Candy Crush or Pokemon or whatever it is that we find. Gaming is a really lovely place quite often to just unwind and forget about your day to day. Liking the challenge. This one really resonated for young people because we kind of assume that if they're playing games, it's mindless gaming, and clearly it isn't. And Roblox, again, is testament to that, you know, they not only the people playing the games, but actually a lot of people engaging on our platform are creators as well. They really love that challenge stuff. And of course, the most resident right now, a third of people at the time said their offline friends were there. So they were coming home from school. The world is different than the world that many of us grew up in. You can't just go and hang out with your friends in the park. Definitely now you can't go and hang out with your friends in the park. So maintaining those relationships in a safe social space is absolutely key. So, unfortunately, people still have this really negative view of gaming. They are not the devil. They come in all shapes and sizes. There is something for everyone. And while we have to, of course, acknowledge some games are totally not suitable for kids and they're not designed for kids, most are either for teenagers or for younger children. There is something for everyone. And there are so many different types of games with so many different benefits. There is a real therapeutic benefit to a lot of games, and in lots of different ways. This one example that I'm sharing on my screen right now, I don't know if you can see, sorry, but this is a young lad called Luke who's been on our platform for some time. Unfortunately, he lost his father a couple of years ago. It's a very touching story. He really struggled with his emotions after losing his father, and his mother was a real advocate of kind of play therapy, and as a family they explored that for a while, but he actually found his therapy on Roblox, and he created a game where he explored his own anxiety and depression and built this game where he went and researched tips and hints that would help him on this journey. And he built this game, which is basically an obstacle course, and you work your way through. And every now and then there'll be a hint or a tip. And if you kind of read it and you take it in, or do a couple of little challenges that are in there, it opens up this beautiful world. And gradually the world that he built gets more colourful and bright and cheerful and makes you feel more happy. And that was just his way of dealing with his emotions and what he was going through. But as often happens with these things, now thousands of other kids have played that game, and it's also helped them with their own issues. And I think that is, you know, just one perfect example of how games help the multi and the many. But unfortunately, there is still this massive fear of games. So the other survey we did last year was with UK parents, and we spoke to 1,500 parents, and 89% of them told us that they were fearful of gaming, online gaming specifically. And they quoted things like contact from strangers, risk of bullying, excessive screen time, and maybe, you know, not being socially awkward. Interestingly, and as an aside, 88% of parents also told us they could recognize the benefits of gaming. So they said, well, actually, my kid's technical skills are way better, and he's got a better social life online than offline, which was really interesting. But ultimately, this 89%, I think, is the reality for many, and particularly from an education point of view, this is when you try to say, well, gaming actually is a really good way, or using, you know, game-based learning is a good way to engage with kids. Parents will be anti it. Is the media. So of those people we spoke to, half of them told us that it was things they read in the media that they were finding frightening. None of their fear actually came from their own experience or their children's experience or their family members' experience. It was purely based on headlines, and of course we believe what we see. And unfortunately now with COVID-19, this is not going away. This new pandemic has brought even more things to be fearful of. So I think this is my call to action for educators and tech companies. We all have to work together and try to make sure that when we talk to families, that we're not frightening them, that we're giving them factual advice, factual information. Of course, there are things that are negative, and some of those we may touch on. You know, things do go wrong online, but actually, this is a time when young people will be using tech, and we need to all embrace it and understand it and try to make sure that we're not spreading some of those fear messages. So again, you know, many of the people on this call, most of the people on this call are educators. I'm also assuming some of you are parents, but ultimately here is where we are is, from our point of view, we need you as educators to be able to help parents in this space. We all have to work together in terms of how we share the messages. It's a collective responsibility between companies, between educators, between parents, to keep kids safe. I love this messaging from CDC. Essentially, we would never give kids a set of car keys and let them go on the road without all the right education, without making sure they were tested and confident and competent to go in a car. But unfortunately, we do tend to do that when it comes to the online environment. Okay, so where we have a bit of a disconnect, we, in our survey, the US survey of, as I say, 3,500 parents and nearly 600 teenagers, we asked them how often they talk about online safety. And there was a huge gap in understanding. So parents, 93% of parents said that they were talking about it occasionally or often. And as you can see, only 39% of teens said the same. More worrying, 60% of teenagers said that never happened, compared to only 6%. Whatever it is that parents are talking about, kids are seeing it very, very differently. This is why it's so important that they're not just getting those messages there, but they're getting them here as well. Where the disconnect still continues, 91% of parents said their kids would be likely to ask them for help if they were bullied online. As you can see here, this is very different from a teenage point of view. Only 26% of them would actually go and tell their parents. In fact, they'd pretty much do anything else. So they'd report it to the platform. They'd go and tell a teacher, you guys, or another adult, and then tell a parent. So I think it's really important that parents understand that they're not the first port of call, and that educators feel confident that they can now, the educators now are actually probably the first port of call should something go wrong. And that's really important to hear. So I'm going to dig a little bit now into some of our tools on the platform. Please do ask questions. Just from my team's point of view, I can't actually see if you send me a message, so if you could send it on one of our other channels, that would be perfect. If there are any questions that come up, or verbally, let me know. But yeah, so I'm just going to dip into some of this. Hopefully you'll have seen some of it, but if you have any questions, I can elaborate later on. So we have well over 1,000 human moderators working at Roblox. We have people all over the world, 24/7, and supporting different languages all over the world. Those moderators review every single image, video, and audio file that is uploaded into a game when they're created. In addition to that, they also human moderate quite a lot of the reports that come in through our other channels. So anything that is a risk of harm to a child would eventually end up in front of a human to make that decision. We have a multi-level approach to safety on the platform. So we use lots of different tools, and we're always building out those tools and adding new ones. So for example, something that's very low level, like a spam report, would probably be managed by an automated system. But as I say, something that was a risk to a child would definitely then end up in front of a human to make a decision. And ultimately, the senior management team in that team we're a very close-knit team, and it is all based in our offices in HQ, and work with all the other departments to resolve issues very quickly. So we have text chat on Roblox. I'm sure most of you are probably familiar with that. We don't currently have any voice chat on there. It's all just the text chat. We have automated chat filters, which across the board, we don't have any unfiltered chat on the platform. What we do have is a more restrictive chat for under 13s. So we still don't allow profanity or sexual language for older kids, but we just lock it down further for the smaller ones, particularly around, we don't allow sharing of personal information. So they're not allowed to share their address or their telephone number or their social media accounts. We have automatic avatar clothing detection. So we don't allow naughty outfits. We don't allow inappropriate images on clothes, for example. And no, you can't technically be nude on the platform, although some people will try sometimes. We do have behavior reporting systems in-game, so you can report somebody for breaking the rules. We also have other ways people can contact us, so they can contact via telephone and email and our contact forms. But actually one of the most powerful, particularly for our youngest members of the community, is actually block. We receive millions of reports every month, the majority of which are not actually actionable. They don't quite break the terms, but it's just someone being a bit mean. And that's exactly what happens in real life and exactly what happens in the classroom. And it's very empowering sometimes to teach young people that they can just block someone and move on. Because in all likelihood, if they were to report some of those things to us, it probably wouldn't be actionable. We also have tools for parents. So again, my request as educators, when you're having these conversations with parents, please point them to these tools. That's what they're there for. We really appreciate your help amplifying these messages. So one thing I mentioned was the 13s age limit. So we have a more restrictive area for under 13s generally. So we encourage parents of younger users to use the right date of birth when they sign on. One thing that's available is this age visibility. Now, a lot of our users have multiple accounts because they have different personas for different experiences. So if your kid is playing, you can at one glance see whether they're logged in as an under 13 account or an over 13 account. And that's a useful conversation starter sometimes if your kid perhaps is playing a little bit older and is an account you maybe don't know about. The chat function that I discussed can be turned on or off or moderated. So you as a parent can work with your child to decide what's right for them. And you can actually turn chat off completely, or you can have chat with friends only, and you pin control that area. So the kids can't just go in and change it when they want to. But yeah, essentially they can. You can decide whether they're ready for chat on the platform. Again, for the under 13s, we have this more curated games list. So for the very young players, it's a gentle introduction to Roblox, and then perhaps as they get older, you might want to consider lifting that and allowing them access to some of the slightly older games that are on the platform. And one of my things that I set up is the new Facebook group called Roblox Civility. Please do go check it out. It is not a parent-specific group. This is for anyone interested in civility and generally how we manage safety issues. And it's content not just about Roblox. This is content from all of our safety partners all over the world, as well as interesting articles and tips we think would be really interesting. Now, I'm going to take a break there now. I think we've got a question, Genevieve, for you.
Yeah, Laura, we actually do have a couple of questions that came in. So one of them, which I think is very important, was asking, this is from Perrin, so do these tools also work in VIP servers? Because I know that we've been encouraging lots of educators to use VIP servers to allow like classes to stay together or friend groups to stay together and very deliberately play with one another, so they're not playing with necessarily like strangers, but they are playing with people they know. Do all these tools also work in VIP servers?
Yes. So the other thing I was going to address is you're asking for a link for the curated game list. So this is like the total games. So there's not a link to just the games that the 13 and under can see, but we do have a couple of different sorts that we're featuring right now. And those are the Learn and Explore sort. So those are some sorts where you can either explore new places, go on a virtual field trip, such as like you can go to Paris or see a shrine based off of an actual shrine in Japan, or you can learn a new skill, learn how to play chess or something like that, or learn a little bit more about density by building an airplane. So that's one of the sorts that we have right now, and I can link to that. The other one, we do also have right now a sort called Play Together, and that's a sort of games that have VIP servers right now at a steep discount, so at 10 Robux, which is the equivalent's very, very cheap. You know, you could buy 500 Robux for about $5 approximately, to give you an idea of what that is in real terms money. And then, yeah, the other thing I want to point out from Laura, what she was saying, to see the age of the accounts, if you look in the right-hand corner, if you ever look at your accounts, there should not be a Y next to it. There will, or sorry, not a Y, I'll say less than 13 plus. It will not, on your account, it'll say 13 plus, which I could share that. So I think we're good.
Fantastic. Thank you, Genevieve.
I forget that I mark my test accounts with a Y, so I had to be like, wait, no, not the test accounts, the real accounts.
Wonderful, yeah. Thank you. Please keep the questions coming. Sorry I was a bit slow picking up then.
Oh, no worries. And then again, just to roll back, so just to reiterate, yeah, so VIP servers, these all do work across any mode of play on the platform, VIP or non-VIP, all these tools that Laura was mentioning. And also, I believe we have the links to the sorts on education.roblox.com in our Learn Remotely link that's on the homepage. So you should be able to access them there as well.
I'll also link the Learn Explore sort right now.
Thank you. It's on my last slides as well, so that's perfect though. Okay, so safety partnerships are really important to us at Roblox. So we work with organizations, NGOs, and some government bodies all over the world, to make sure that they're keeping us informed of any trends, worries, it could be language or particular issues they're seeing in their regions that they want to make us aware of, but also they help to amplify our messages. So if we introduce a new tool on the platform, they can then amplify it in their own countries. We have a safety advisory board, which we meet every couple of months, which includes people like the Family Online Safety Institute, who you may well know, who provide great advice for parents. We have the UK Safe for Internet Centre, Kids Safe, who give us advice around data protection and COPPA issues. And people like USK, based in Germany, who are the statutory body in Germany that help us with age rating. So we have this broad network of advisors who really help us to be the best we can, but that we can also help to inform them as well. We grow that group all the time. It's really important to us that when we're talking to families and educators in different countries, that we're being very nuanced and culturally sensitive, and we understand we can't do that without these partnerships. They also help us with some of the resources, a couple of which I'm going to show you at the end of this presentation, but we're always looking for new opportunities in that area. So for example, most of our guides have been translated into now French and Spanish. We're looking at Germany. We have an English resource specific. So we're always really interested in those different things as well. So now some advice around online safety. Now I'm going to make some sweeping assumptions that as educators, you are going to be having these conversations anyway. So we're not going to start with the really basic stuff. I know you guys know this, but it's just, I want you to think about these things in a broader topic and in a broader way. And I'm also going to touch on where we are right now and make it really current for right now. So the first thing that I think is so important to me, and I'm so happy that Roblox have allowed me to do, I've worked in digital safeguarding for nearly 20 years. And in that time, you know, some of what I talk about is based on what I've seen, cases I've dealt with, but also there's a lot of assumptions and a lot of stuff that comes from law enforcement and government about what's important. Actually, taking a step back and asking young people what it is they want you to know is so important. It really, really is. That listening thing. Um, yes, there are big things we know are a huge risk. You can't take away the risk of exploitation. You can't take away bullying, those sorts of things. They're going to happen. But actually, ask young people what it is they want you to know, because quite often it will surprise you. Um, Understanding their world is really different to ours. So actually the risks that they have and actually the concerns and worries and the challenges they have are probably really different than the ones we would be focusing on in an education setting. Now, safeguarding and duty care is really important. So we know we have to focus on the big risks. But actually the things that are harmful to young people might not always be those most significant ones. There might be those day-to-day things that are really damaging. So just trying to get to the bottom of that and asking those questions. So that's really important. Screen time, I'm sure we're all kind of sick of this conversation and the lack of really robust advice about this. But ultimately, you know, understanding that particularly right now, kids are having to use screen time for everything. They are doing their schoolwork online and in front of screens. They are also creating, playing, socializing, doing research, doing their online shopping, as are we. And so, you know, just reassuring them and reassuring parents about these messages is actually all of us are having to use these things. So linking that in with being mindful. Is what you're doing useful, interesting, essential? Does it make you happy? They're all really good conversations to have. And if any of those are not happening, then it's time to go, well, maybe then you need to stop doing that particular thing. Of course, we encourage a balance. It is so important. We want young people to stay fit, stay healthy, and, you know, human interaction is always going to be the first and most important thing. But I think, you know, particularly as kids age up, and we're talking about teenagers, allowing them to make some of those decisions and recognize those good and bad habits in themselves is really good. Talking about well-being. Now, we've talked a lot about digital well-being, and in fact, this is a learning point for me, is that actually I spoke to one of our young community members recently who said, there is no such thing as digital well-being. What happens online affects my whole well-being, and I would like you all to take that away because that really resonated with me. And I think we need to just look at that whole, it's not just about your online well-being, it is about your whole emotional health, your physical health, everything. And that's where that beautiful balance comes in of, yes, you do need a certain amount of screen time, but actually take a break, know yourself, and if it doesn't make you feel good, that's the time. As educators, it's really important that we're involved, that we're asking the right questions. But as we know, we need kids to build resilience. We need them to slightly make mistakes as long as it's within a safe environment and they're not going to come to harm. Those messages still resonate now. And this is the really tough one. So we say to kids, you can tell me anything. But then when they do, we fly off the handle, we get really cross, we don't handle it very well, both as parents and educators. And actually, we really need to stop doing that. We need to let kids trust us. We haven't been able to publish our new survey, but here's a little sneak peek. But essentially, we said to young people, what stops you going to talk to adults? And they were like, well, because they just wouldn't understand. We need to get over that. So we need them to feel that they have trust in us and that we're not, you know, we can understand or try to understand. So COVID specific, we know kids are going to be online more. It's obvious. They already are. And with that, there are some issues. So already we're starting to see inequality in access to not just the tech, but the broad, you know, the bandwidth. Some people actually can't be online as much. Some people don't have the consoles to stay in touch with their friends. So when we're talking in a moment about education, that's really something to be mindful of. And some families are really tech unfriendly as well. And I don't think people are really prepared for that. Everyone's just assumed that everyone can manage everything online. And that's not quite the case. We're unfortunately, having all the reports coming through from people like the FBI and the National Crime Agency here in the UK, that they're already seeing grooming behaviour ramping up because more kids are online. The good news is that hands-on offending has gone out the window because everyone's at home together. So that's a positive, but we just need to be really mindful that we're ahead of the curve on this stuff and being as mindful and protective as we can. Is no brainer. Online has already been the new playground for some time, but right now kids are not able to go and hang out in the street. They need a safe place where they can hang out online. And so we need to do that even as part of our education stuff. You know, if they were at school all day, they would have break times regularly. So you still need to be building that into their daytime routine and perhaps not overloading with learning moments. The fake news stuff, this is really difficult, but I'd like to say, encourage your young people to go and look at sensible sources of information like government websites. I say that in an unweighted way. But, you know, where possible, social media probably isn't the best source of information. We all have a responsibility to help them to try to understand what's going on with them. So find credible sources, get them to question the things that they're seeing online. And the reality for all of us, adults and young people, is just this situation is really upsetting and we're absorbing so much of it all day. It's constantly on the news and constantly on social media. And certainly even in my own home, I've seen young people having these conversations where it's overwhelming. So take breaks, do stuff that makes you happy, go do something else. And that applies to all of us, professionals or kids. So balancing that fun. So specific to education, right now we're in this whole new world of home learning, remote learning. So a few tips around things I think, you know, people adapted so quickly, and well done everyone for getting this stuff in place. But these are new tools we weren't necessarily using before. It's really essential that everybody has reviewed the policies, the reporting, the safety for their own point of view. So you feel confident using those tools, but that you can also educate the young people around you and the families around you on how to use those tools. Again, this idea that everyone can just immediately step into remote learning. Some people don't have the tech, some people don't have the bandwidth, some people have families who just don't get it. So how do we make sure everyone's got a fair crack at the whip and that they're not going to be in any way disadvantaged because of this? The online rules of the classroom are different now. While some things still apply, it's really important that you're kind of considering this new online classroom environment, whatever it looks like. So whether you're broadcasting or having interactive lessons, kids are going to be behaving really differently. So that be quiet, please listen to me kind of stuff is going to be really different. So just revisit that and set new rules that feel a bit more current. Some of you may have heard of Zoom bombing, some may not, but using new technologies brings new risks and new issues. So we need to make sure that all staff are aware of these. Unfortunately, I've already seen, both professionally and personally, some terrible examples of where this has gone wrong. So, you know, faith-based Zoom meetings where they've sort of said, oh, we want everyone to join the congregation today, and then just published an open Zoom. And then you've had bad actors coming on and spreading awful things on chat, awful images on chat. It's particularly when we're talking about child protection, we don't want any of that to appear. So it's really important that, you know, you only share those Zoom links with people who you want in the meeting, and if possible, you password protect it and send that in a different way. We need these kids to be as safe as possible. They do not need to be seeing all that stuff. And it's not just Zoom. Most platforms are a little bit vulnerable. So it is just about making sure that you're ring fencing those things. Peer group bullying and issues. Kids are falling out now. Kids who've been friends forever, as I say, this is now a real issue. So just making sure you've been mindful about how they can talk to you for support when they're not in the classroom. You might not be picking up on that subtle, oh, you're normally a group of friends and now one of you's excluded. because they're all hanging out that little bit more, but in just one space, just try to be mindful of that and having those conversations so they feel safe that they can come to you for help. Again, I reiterate, your duty of care still exists even when you're homeschooling. Just because you're not in a classroom environment, we want you to be mindful that, and I know you will be, but that you're there to support those kids and protect them in the same way that you would if you were in a classroom. But it's a slightly different playground that we're playing in now. In line with that, does your safeguarding policy now fit for off-site support of kids? How do they alert you to issues? How do you then escalate issues? It really is now the time to make sure that all those things are really robust. And just generally, we have these online safety. It might be that if you're very good, that you have this conversation every couple of months. Most schools probably have one assembly once a year where you say, today we're going to do online safety. But these kids are here every day. This is their new normal. So online safety education has to happen all the time. You need to make sure you're building time in, not just for maths and English, but this stuff is as important because that's where the risk is for them right now. So now we have some resources. So Genevieve, I'm going to pass to you. I know you touched on it beautifully. Is there anything else you want to talk about here?
Yeah, actually. So I am actually going to share the screen. Okay, second. Let me make sure I've got it going. And then one of the things I want to do is answer a couple of the questions that I saw earlier. One of them being about where can I find more resources on how to use VIP servers. So this is our Teaching Remotely page with Roblox Studio. You can find it if you click on the front page of education.roblox.com. You'll see there's a Teaching Remotely. It's the biggest block, and it'll bring you to this page. So this page, what you see is like we have some tips on how to actually use Roblox in the classroom, such as setting it up, so interacting online, some of the things that Laura just talked about, but also on here's how you can actually work together to collaborate on the same file and VIP private servers. I will say that we're going to be beefing up the VIP servers article based off of a really good feedback that we received off of a librarian who just hosted a massive 50-person server in Adopt Me. So if you've got similar feedback, really, about things that you want to see or helpful tools for you, let us know. You can email us at education@roblox.com. Let us know how it went for you guys. And then below that, what you're going to see is we have a few lesson plans. So if you want to actually teach a Roblox session, we have some good starting places. So Story Games is a little bit more computer science focused. Galactic Speedway is a little more creativity focused. So, being able to express yourself by building your own custom spaceship. And we also have some recommended lesson plans and tutorials for different age groups. Okay, so that was a little bit about VIP servers, but since I know there was a little bit more questions, one thing I wanted to show you is just how do you actually see, how do you report people, and does that work on VIP servers? So this is actually my Adopt Me VIP server. It's really popular. One, it's just a fantastic game. Everyone loves to play it. And it also allows for up to 50 players in a private server. All I have to do is press escape. And I'm the only one in this server, but then you can see where the report features are. So you can say hey, is something inappropriate about this game? Or was it one of the players who were in this game? Right now, it's just me, so that's not really gonna work so much. But you can say what was going on, and give a short description of what was going on. So this is one of these things I would actually screen share and show this to your students as well to make sure they know how to find these report settings, but also talk about what's appropriate to report. You don't want people just being casual, but hey, was there cussing? Was there inappropriate behavior? Make sure that they know what is inappropriate behavior. All right, I've got 1 minute to close up, and I think the last thing I want to just reiterate, so you can see up at the top, I'm just pulling up an old slide. If you want to check to make sure that the account the student is using, look for this under 13 sign, or it'll say 13 plus on your accounts. And if you ever want to change like chat settings or something like that, you can go to the click. So I have some examples of lessons online. Do I have a structured preferred curriculum for different ages? I will say every class is so different. It depends on how much time you're giving to Roblox. Are we talking about an entire semester? Something like we have code fundamentals, which is in that one actually can last an entire semester. Or are you just looking for like a shorter one-off lesson, like an hour of code style lesson? So we are ISTE certified, like in terms of the alignments. And one last thing, I'll bring up a lesson real quick. So if you want to see like the story games one, my internet is really getting a workout right now. You can see we do call out like, hey, what ISTE standards are there, and like how long we recommend for each particular lesson that we have. But we do see people adopting our lessons and our material to whichever length of curriculum that they're looking for. All right, I know that was a lot, and we are exactly at time. So I hope I had answered your questions. And once again, I'm totally available. Our education team is available. We also have Peter online, who's part of the education available. You can email us at education@roblox.com if you have specific questions. Plus, check out our page, education.roblox.com. We have a lot of lessons and a ton of material on there. We have like over 100 hours of curriculum. All right, so I'm going to hand it off to Laker.
Yeah, so yeah, thank you so much, Laura and Genevieve. Yeah, I know that we started a little bit late, and I know that we're cutting it a little bit short from the presentation. I just want to remind everyone that this will be archived on education.roblox.com, both recording and the presentation. And I really want to emphasize the presentation part, because at the end, Laura does include some very, very good online resources that we definitely want you to have available to you to check out. So please do check out the presentation online afterwards, so you can get access to those. But yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, again, both Genevieve and Laura for working with us today, and thank you to all of you who have attended, participating with the questions and answers, and also, you know, helping us keep kids safe, you know, in this time and all times. So once again, this is wrapping up the second part of our 4-part series and webinar of educational webinars. We'll be back in 2 weeks. But again, thank you so much for joining us today. Stay safe, stay healthy.
Thank you, guys.